Welcome to James Hates Everything. It's Thursday, July 17th, 2025, and we're going to bring you all the arcade news of the week that you may have missed. And of course, our big story, can reviewing Anbernic and other similar handhelds or other devices that the manufacturer might ship with some questionable software on there land you in jail? Well, that may be the case for one YouTuber. We're going to talk about it, and then we're going to talk about how that may impact you if you are in the United States and Canada. So get ready, because we are about to get into it. All right, as I mentioned tonight, we are going to talk about the YouTuber that is currently facing the possibility of jail for having the gall to review Anbernic handhelds. And before we do that, I just want to say hello to everybody who stopped by. Oh, okay. Sorry about that. We had some technical difficulties, apparently. I've got all my computer ninjas fighting off whatever that was. So really appreciate it. But before we get started, again, I want to say hello to everybody who dropped by to say hello before the stream started. And if you want to shout out, now is the time. So first up is Biggie D, and he says, hey, that story you're talking about, that happened outside the US in Europe. And yes, it did, and we're going to talk about it. We've got the B Me, who dropped by early and says, what, now we're putting content creators in jail? Who's next? JJ dropped by, says the incident happened in Italy. Yes, sir. We're going to talk about that. Goofyfoot dropped by and said, did anybody call Restalgia? He needs to go on the lam. Of course, everybody knows Restalgia is the Anbernic guru. We've got J-Rod in the house. Of course, Glenn's Retro Show. Thanks for dropping by. Show Gecko is here. We got Jim the Pacers fan and Stock Jock. Thanks for dropping by. Really appreciate that. I hope everybody has had a good week. So let's just jump right into some of the news of the week, and then we'll get into our main story. So first up, and I know JR was asking about this earlier, if we were going to talk about this. And of course, we cannot let a news go by without talking about the Analog 3D once again being delayed. In case if you guys don't know what the Analog 3D is, it is the FPGA version of the Nintendo 64, promised last October by Analog. Of course, it was supposed to ship in it was originally supposed to ship, I believe, in March. That was delayed to July, and then earlier this week, it was further delayed to the end of August. And of course, Analog is blaming tariffs for this, like as though some tariffs just suddenly popped up. But I don't think where this is made, they changed recently. So that was a kind of a curious statement. You think they could have made that a while ago if that was the case. But they did promise the people who pre-ordered, you're not going to pay extra or anything. So again, it's really weird. Why did the tariffs have an impact then? But I get maybe they didn't want to ship them when they were really high, but it's been pretty steady at this 30% rate for quite a while. And I know that there was a deal, allegedly, I don't remember if it got signed or not, but I know there was a lot of talk a deal was in place. And so it should even be lower than that today. So who knows? But either case, it's delayed to August, but they promise it's coming, along with a bunch of reviews and details of the system. I pre-ordered this right away. I'm a big fan of Analog's products. I own pretty much all of them, though I did miss the really important Nintendo one, the Noir. But I did do have all the others, and I think they're great, and I really think they're awesome, so I jumped on this one. But this is one I have big concerns with. They never have shown anything, no videos, no data about their new operating system, how they are doing the FPGA for N64. We haven't seen any gameplay, nothing. So it's a lot of questions, and the continued delay just adds to those questions. And JJ is here live now, who says P-Dubs sent me. So thanks everybody who made their way over from P-Dubs Arcade Loft, who just got done with a fun little stream. And we will cover a little bit of the topics that he talked about, but not too many. We got a lot of news to get through. So let's jump in to the next one. And this one is pretty interesting. If you are a Nintendo Switch or PS4 fan, Konami is releasing via Arcade Archives, which is owned by the company Hamster, their very first original arcade basketball game from 1984. Of course, we're talking about Super Basketball. You can get that as of today. Actually, it may have been yesterday. Yes, as of yesterday, you could get it. It's going to run you just under $7, if I remember right. Just under $8. So $79.99 on the Switch eShop and the PlayStation. Of course, this is the precursor to games like Double Dribble, Run and Gun 2. So a interesting early addition to the sports arcade scene. So if you're interested, check that out. And technically not a technician, thanks for dropping by. Next up, of course, is got to give Moat, Mike of All Trades, a big shout out. He did a video on this, and he caught that Sideshow has now put up their pre-orders for Crystal Castles and the Skee Ball Replicade. Definitely recommend checking out his video because he has full video from the reveal. So you get really up close and personal with these products. You get a really good view. So definitely check that out. But I did want to share here what New Wave products are currently available for order at Sideshow, because Sideshow, if you guys don't know, is for big boy toys, like they very expensive stuff like Hot Toys and Sideshow's own brand. And of course, they've been a long-time distributor of New Wave toys. But one thing I think is interesting is we can get a glimpse of when these will be released thanks to Sideshow. And these typically ship a little bit after people who pre-order directly from New Wave Toys, so keep that in mind. But as we take a look at Crystal Castles here, it's hard to read, but in this very small print up here in the corner, it says that this is scheduled to ship sometime between December 2025 and February 2026. So very late in Q4. If we go to the Skee Ball, which I think this is their newest item for pre-order, if I'm not mistaken, you're looking at February 2026 to April 2026. So well into, the start of the new year. And Black Hole, I know this is one people have been waiting on for quite a while now. And one of the reasons I've held off on really any more New Wave Toys orders because there is just stacking up the things that have not delivered. This is another one that is estimated to ship between December 2025 and February 2026. And we also have the Golden Tee, which is listed between October and December 2025. So Q4. So really looking forward to seeing that finally ship. Of course, this is the first one that comes with Glenn's trackball. So you get the trackball stick attachment with this if you pre-ordered that. Not every version, right? This one here at Sideshow doesn't look like there is an option for that. But if you order from New Wave Toys, you do have the option to add that get it in a bundle, etc. So pretty interesting. Wanted to share that again. Big shout out for Moat for catching the announcement of those two at Sideshow and for sharing that video. His baldness was blinding. That's interesting. I think that's from P-Dubs. So next up, I want to talk about if there's a few actual arcade news this week. And one of them is taking place in Springfield, Missouri. And I think it's worth giving them a shout out. This is before I position that. So JJ, where did Moat get the video content? So that he got that from, I believe, Sideshow's stream. They do a stream and a show periodically where they show off new products, and they have big streams like that where they debut all this stuff. And so he obviously caught that, captured the footage, and so that's where it came. Joe Cade, thanks for dropping by. Thumper Squid is here, and of course, big shout out to Jason for gifting the 5 James Hates Everything memberships. And I do want to take a moment, since somebody gifted memberships, and again, thank you very much to the moderator extraordinaire. One of the things I've decided to do with this channel is really kind of try to take things to the next level. So right now I'm in talks to try and hire an editor for my produced content. So to be totally transparent, memberships, super chats, things like that are all going to go to support that effort. I really want to take my produced content to the next level. I have all these ideas. They just stack up. I just don't have enough hours in the day to both, concept out the video, shoot the videos, do all that, and give the quality of edits that I want and what I'm really looking for out of my produced content. And so I've decided to turn towards a professional editor or professional editors that have the skills and know-how to do it not only well, but to do it quickly, which takes me a significant amount of time is not a thing. So just putting that out there, because that is where that money goes. And I always appreciate all the support and things, because it all gets rolled back into the channel, either through gear or in this case, trying to up the level of content so you guys get the kind of stuff you deserve to get. Okay, now that's spiel. Sathius is in the house. Thanks for dropping by. And we have Dan Z here, Charlie Chuck, Into the Line, Israel Gaming, Chris Nooner, Dennis B, The Beamy, Dan Z. Everybody's dropping by. An AI editor, of course. Everybody knows I love AI. Wish you could get an AI editor to do the whole thing. Mock James, I'll do it. If you can swing it, it'll help you focus on the content. Exactly. Ojib, thanks for dropping by. I wanted to put never pulled the trigger. Interesting. And then John Fritz is here. Brooklyn, thanks for dropping by. Have MG edit my videos. Boy, well, that would be interesting, wouldn't it? All right. So again, the next story is I wanted to give a shout out to this arcade that is based in Springfield, Missouri. It is their 20th anniversary. And so any arcade that has lasted for 20 years, I think deserves a shout out. And my guess is if you find yourself in Springfield, Missouri, and you find yourself in the 1984 arcade, you could probably run into a gentleman who has the ROMs, the one everybody's looking for. You could bounce into this guy in this arcade, possibly. But again, a big shout out to these guys at 1984 Arcade. Of course, as I mentioned, it is like a 20-year anniversary, all that fun stuff. So they've been around a long time, but it says 20 years of celebrating 1984. So whatever. And so they're promoting this big event, and so definitely check them out if you're ever in the Springfield area. So from the bad news, or from the good news to the bad news when it comes to home arcade, and that is the former Sega arcade, which was sold to Ginda Gigo Entertainment, and I'm sure I pronounced that wrong a few years ago, who kept the arcade open but under a different brand, has officially announced they are ceasing business at the classic Sega arcade location in Akihabara, and their last day is end of August, I believe. And so it's kind of the end of an era. There are other Gigo arcades in the Akihabara district, but this is one that is iconic. I believe it has already been sold, or they're partnering with another company who has some ideas for this location moving forward. So hopefully it stays a classic arcade, but with both Sega and Gigo having issues there, who knows? But so I wanted to share that because it's kind of the end of an era. Next up is a new arcade game. So Alan One this week announced the release of Soda Slam. And I'm sure you're thinking, like, who cares? Right? This is one of these modern arcade games that is very much redemption based, though it can do regular arcade where it's just scores, or it can be redemption based. You can see it's kind of a big old gaudy system, but there's something special, I think, interesting about this. It is definitely a modern arcade game, but as you take a look here at the gameplay, I think you will maybe see what I'm talking about, because it very much has the vibes of a classic arcade game that I love, and I know a lot of people love in this community. So let's take a look. Of course, it's Soda Slam. It is 2 players, so you can compete against each other. And you may notice right away, you see the controls are taps. That's right. It's kind of a modern version of Tapper. It looks like it plays a lot like some of these cell phone games where you have customers come in and you got to serve their order fast before they leave. So, but it's very much in the vein of, very much in the vein of Tapper without the movement. Instead, you're moving yourself to the different people, kind of a thing. But I thought it was kind of interesting concept. I don't know how good the overall game looks itself. It looks like pretty cheesy animation. But I would love to see this in an arcade, play it, see if it really does give those Tapper vibes with the Tapper. And Hayden Dew is here. Thanks for dropping by. ROMs for what? Well, all the ROMs, Hayden, all the ROMs. B Kirby is here, says, what's up, fellas? Scaredy Cat dropped by. I seen the icy version of Kalahari last weekend. That's pretty cool. And of course, you guys have probably heard this today, but of course, we had Zen Pinball make their big announcement. We talked about this last week. What would the table be? Well, now we know the table coming in the next pinball packs from Zen, which should launch day and date across the platform on FXVR, 4KP, PC, all that stuff, is Pinbot. Of course, one of the originals. Personally, for me, myself, I think this table looks beautiful, but it's that era of pinball where I'm just kind of so these older, kind of very basic pinball games. So obviously I'll enjoy playing it, but it's not really up my alley. I would rather they release Bride of Pinbot or something like that, which I know they have on other systems, I believe, but it would be nice to see that come to the Pinball FX 4K. But for those who are interested, we know the first table in this pack for sure is going to be Pinbot. So pretty excited. I know a lot of people are fired up to see that one. Yeah, and of course, Jason shared the Pinbot trailer there. Um, I'll see it at CAX on Saturday. I thought I've seen it before. Kurt the Daring says trying to figure out the goal of the game. I looks like urinals, yeah. Of course, everybody's talking about the Soda Stream. So this is, think of it as a redemption game. So if you're doing for points, you're obviously just going for high score. But as a redemption game, I would assume the more you fill up, the faster you do it, the less you spill, you're going to win more tickets, so you can trade it in for way overpriced garbage. So, fill up your urinals when you see this game and go ahead and play it. Take a look. Now we're going to start easing into our main topic a little bit. And to do that, we got to talk about some two big events that I think occurred this week that can shed some light on what is happening over in Italy. And the first one, in case you missed it, was the stories that were coming out about Nintendo Switch 2 owners who purchased pre-owned games from places like GameStop, like wherever, their local game shop. They go home, they throw it in their Switch 2, go online to play, to do the updates, and boom, their Switch is banned from online. They did nothing wrong. What happened? What went on here? Why am I suddenly banned from online? Well, it turns out that the prior owner of the game that this person bought had used something like the MiG Switch to dump this game and pirate it previously. And so when that game ID signed on online on another system, it viewed it as an illegal copy of the game and locked down the person's console for pirating. Now, fortunately, the person was able to get a hold of support at Nintendo, who were able to remove the block and get him back online and working normally. So it's not a quote unquote brick that they're doing. It is just a ban. It is reversible by support, but it is now another challenge, right? We already know about the risk of buying a used Switch 2. It could already have been banned off of Nintendo Switch Online. Now you have to worry if the used game you bought was also dumped or used by somebody from nefarious purposes. And so, really it's the used Nintendo Switch 2 market for the time being is going to be pretty risky. So know that before you get into it, consider that. Thankfully, I haven't seen much used Nintendo Switch 2 software out there. As you can imagine, it hasn't really been out that long and there aren't that many games, but I'm sure we'll start coming across that more and more as time goes on. And it looks like we have a $9.99 super chat from NASA Canes fan who says, I've been MIA. Is Arcade OneUp officially gone? Unfortunately or unfortunately, depending on how you look at it, Arcade OneUp is alive and well. Last week during Amazon Prime Week, they had a fire sale where they were dumping like their old cabs that have been sitting out for a while. The Pac-Man, the NBA Jam, Mortal Kombat 2. What was the other one? It wasn't Class of 81 because they hid that one. Oh yeah, Golden Tee. All for a pretty significant discount, 150 off. So you could pick those up brand new for $350. So it was a pretty big sale if you didn't have one of those cabs that came out a year or 2 years ago. But that's really all they've been doing. Today or earlier today, I think I saw Jim the Pacers fan shared the news that it looks like the claw machine is finally coming to Canada. So there is that for our Canadian friends. You have an opportunity to buy the claw machine. We are coming up, if not already considerably past it, little past the 6-month anniversary of the release of the claw machine. Mine continues to work great. So I'll be doing kind of a post review, like how has it been doing? How is it holding up? I've heard a lot of mixed reviews from people having issues. Mine is doing great and has been doing great. So I'm going to circle back on that and talk about that a little bit. So look for that video soon enough. But that's the state of Arcade OneUp. There's basically is no state of Arcade OneUp. It's just there. And we've heard that the Pac-Man pub table, not to be confused with last year's Miss Pac-Man, but the Pac-Man pub table is coming to Costco this year. We don't know if anything else is happening, though. So look for that if you're actually interested. And again, thanks for the $9.99 super chat, NASA Canes fan. It is much appreciated. So as we transition from this problem with the used Switch 2 games, kind of hinted at it earlier with our little attack from the FBI, in that the FBI has been actively seizing websites this week tied to the distribution of pirated software. And of course, one of the big ones on here was NSW2U or NSWDL, which if you can figure out, initials, you can probably guess that stands for Nintendo Switch. So Nintendo has been very active working with the FBI and other international authorities to seize the domains of these websites and try to get them shut down this week. And Nintendo has been taking piracy extremely serious. As you guys know, they've gone after the person who created the MiG Switch. They've been very active taking down and striking content related to either showing the Switch 2 before it was officially released or showing how to run ROMs and things like that. And so they're just amping up their efforts, which really is what is going to bring us to the main topic. The reason we are here tonight to discuss. Let me stop this and let me get this up here. And of course, as you guys know, let me jump over to this one. This looks better. So as you guys know, there are some YouTubers out there that do a lot of content on handhelds, companies like Anbernic, Retroid. There's a whole bunch out there. Neo Zero, I think, is one that produces something. Ken Hank, lots of companies out there that produce either handhelds or PC builds or even hard drives, etc., that have questionable content on them. And that is certainly what happened here in Italy. So if you guys missed it, this news went out today or yesterday. It might have been yesterday. Yeah. So it was late yesterday afternoon, of a fairly sizable YouTuber. He's an Italian YouTuber, has an audience of about 50 to 60,000 subscribers. And he put up a video earlier this week announcing that he had been raided at his house, where the FBI seized hundreds of handhelds and products that he has reviewed over the years. He was not the FBI. Did I say the FBI? The Italian authorities. That he had been contacted them earlier. He believing he's done nothing wrong by just reviewing these devices. He fully cooperated. And now he seems to be facing charges. Of course, in Italian law, they don't have to tell him who's filed the complaint until charges are actually filed. But he is definitely facing some sort of criminal legal trouble. And I think some of the headlines where they say he's facing jail is a little sensational. The reality is it's fines up to I think it said like 13,000 euros or something like that, somewhere in there, um, and up to 3 years in jail. What are the likelihood he'll actually see jail time? It's questionable. The law that they're using to go after him is from like 1942, so it's clearly dated, not really something that applies to today's society. Certainly not how copyright works today, more than 60 or 80 years later. But one of the things they can do in Italy is they can also just seize his channel and take it down. So they haven't done that yet, but they can do that even without him being charged or found guilty of any crime. They could just take his channel down. And so it's a bit concerning. And I know, Biggie D was here earlier, and I know a couple other people were here earlier talking about, well, this is in Italy, it doesn't really apply to us, and there's not really anything to worry about. But given the ramp up of actions taken by Nintendo in this area, I thought it would be worth exploring what really is the risk for YouTubers in the United States and in Canada, and what are some things you can do to minimize that risk. And I think you'll find some surprising stuff as we go through this. So I think some of the assumptions people have are mostly correct, but also wrong. And when I say that, we get into this, I think you'll understand. So first, let's just talk quickly about the applicable laws, and we'll start first with the United States. And first up is the 17 USC section 506, blah, 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 and 18 USC 2319. And the interesting thing about this is that this is basic, traditional criminal copyright violations. So what that means is you're willfully reproducing or distributing more than 10 infringing copies of a product within the span of 6 months, so 180 days, and the retail value is somewhere equal or over $2,500. So you can see how some of these companies, and it looks like P-Dubs is in the house. If you're bald, press 1. So can I do like 0.75? Like, is that an option? You can see how these companies like Anbernic, Ken Hank may be, and I'm going to say allegedly, could be, possibly. They would need a legal expert to tell them this is for entertainment purposes only. They potentially could be in violation of 17 USC, but as most of those companies are outside the United States, it's probably hard. Most of them are in China, where these laws don't exist, because China doesn't really care about copyright laws, quite frankly. But you have to wonder, Amazon and these places that are facilitating these and actually acting as a distributor, certainly they're in a questionable state and could be considered in violation of this law. But I think the key here, right? The key here is willfully. That is a big part of this law. So the prosecutors would have to prove that Amazon knew and was benefiting from the illegal activity knowingly. I think Amazon skirts this gray area by, when they're alerted to listings with this kind of information, they take the listing down. So while they know it may be going on, they are doing their due diligence to try to remove it, which is likely how they're skirting any real issues. But it's all been pretty widely populated that Nintendo and Amazon are not getting along right now, which is why Amazon did not participate with Nintendo products in the pre-order of the Switch 2 launch. And is this why? Is it because Amazon is not, Nintendo views Amazon as not aggressive enough at taking down these products and stopping these before they get distributed into the United States? And that is certainly a possibility. So, the next law, as we go through here, is related to DMCA. If you guys don't know what that is, it's the Digital Millennium Copyright Act, and it is one of the worst pieces of legislation ever passed in the United States, in my opinion. But it's basically a law that says if you try to hack or do anything to get around copy protection, we can throw your ass in jail. And that, to me, violates all fair use rules. If you buy a software package, you should have the right to back up your software package if you want to. But the law says otherwise. And so where you can run afoul with this law is by trafficking or marketing a device primarily designed to bypass copy protection for commercial advantage. So the key here is marketing or actually trafficking. So being the person who sells it, but just marketing it. So this is where we get into the gray area where YouTubers could find themselves in trouble on the marketing side. So devices like the MiG Switch, if you're, distributing, or this is where we get the gray area as I try to get my thoughts in order. This is where we get the gray area with these YouTubers, similar to like the one in Italy. Technically, if you are doing a review and you've partnered with the company to advertise these products, and you know that these products come with illegal pirated software on them, you are marketing a device that is in violation of DMCA rules. Because emulators themselves are not illegal, but distributing all of this together in a package, hardware, emulator, and the ROMs, this is where you can go afoul. And so, if you're taking promotional dollars, if you are acting in an affiliate where you are benefiting directly, you should be concerned, because now you're in that gray area between the criminal copyright infringement. Again, that's where you're profiting of knowingly distributing that. You're helping market them, DMCA issues. And then that takes us to the last one, which really is not going to play too much, but one people should pay attention to, because obviously companies like Anbernic, they release these devices that very much look similar to classic systems, whether that's the Slide or the SP, which are very much designed to look like the PSP or the Game Boy Advanced SP edition. While they don't contain direct logos and things like that, so considering them counterfeit would be questionable. But they potentially violate various patents and things like that, which would be kind of more civil. But it's something we want to talk about and put out there, because, again, that is an issue. So let's talk about the penalties of these three. So, of course, there are fines involved with all of these. But the first two, you could face prison sentences of 3 to 5 years in prison if they wanted to. So again, if you are distributing willfully these products, maybe you're selling them, you're getting some from these companies, you're selling them on your website, and you're hitting the kind of numbers we talked about, right? Greater than 10, more than $2,500, et cetera, in that time span, you are distributing, potentially, if you know it, willfully distributing these products, and could land yourself with 3 to 5 years in prison, potentially. Under the 17 USC 1201, 1204, you get 5 years, and for the first offense, up to 5 years, And for a second or repeat offense, an additional 10 years on top of that is the risk. Under 18 USC 2320, 20 or 10 years for counterfeit, and up to 20 for repeat offenses. So that's what it looks like in the United States. Let's talk about Canada. This list is a little shorter, but we have the Copyright Act 421B, which selling or renting infringing copies, and then, of course, aiding and abetting criminal code. Both of these carry jail sentences. Very similar laws about distributing devices that contain, copyright infringing products for profit, et cetera, et cetera. And so something to be aware of. Both Canada and the United States, it's very much a gray line on partnering with a company to advertise these products. Is it just me, or is watching a JJ Topics like this feel like we were watching a TeamU version of Console Kids stream? Interesting. All right, so next up, we are going to talk a little bit. Okay, now that we know that there are laws that potentially you could easily, as a content creator, fall into, which do carry jail sentences, let's talk about the reality a little bit. So, quite simply, reviewing a product is not distributing a product. And so that's fair one, right? You have fair use, and obviously you can talk about these products, you can show gameplay content, and not be in any violation of any of these laws. It's absolutely legit to be able to talk about them. So the idea that Nintendo can take these things down is very questionable when YouTube does that, but you have a right to. And so where you can run into problems, I kind of mentioned some of these earlier. So these are some of the things you want to keep in mind. Is affiliate links or coupon codes, right? If you know that the device that you are reviewing is shipped with illegal ROMs on it, then you are running afoul of US law. So keep that in mind. If you are importing units to sell on your website, you are violating, in your own merch shop or on eBay or wherever, you are in violation potentially in all of these laws. If you're bundling ROM packs yourself for convenience, so if you're making it easy for people, and maybe you run a YouTube Discord and you're throwing it out there on people, sending your viewers to your Discord to go download the ROM packs for them, you're now distributing pirated ROMs. Not a great thing, right? If you're selling mod chips or jailbreak kits, or if you're doing the actual modding or jailbreaking for people, while that has clearly gone on for years and years, and some people have built entire channels around doing those things, if you're performing that action for people, could find yourself in violation of US law. And so what are the likelihood? Well, as of now, it's very small likelihood, but it's not impossible. You guys may remember this. Maybe you don't. It's been quite a while, close to 20 years ago, but a first of its kind of lawsuit or criminal action was filed against a person who installed mod devices on Xboxes. And the way this individual was caught is he advertised his services on Facebook, and an undercover agent ordered his services and went to his home. The guy modded his Xbox and they arrested him. Now, you'll see here that this news is from 2018 when the case was finally dismissed. Or was it? I think this was actually way earlier than that. I think that article just has been updated poorly. regardless, but the case was ultimately dismissed on a technicality by the prosecutors. So they had landed themselves already in a lecture from the judge about the case to begin with, like, who wasn't really seeing eye to eye with them, but they had convinced him to let the case go on. But then as it got to trial, the agent who testified about the incident had added to his original statement that when he got the device modded, the modder in question used a pirated application to test and demo the system. So he brought out basically a CDR of some game and ran it to show it worked. Now, he had never presented that evidence or statement prior, so it wasn't given to the defense attorneys, whose entire case argued that the person doing the modding had no idea that it was illegal or that it would be used for pirated software, which obviously we all pretty much probably know that that was probably not accurate. But they had to prove that he willfully knew, right? They had to prove that he knowingly did this stuff for the purposes of piracy, and that's a whole lot harder to do, right? He could say, no, I mod these so you can play your legitimate owned copies of games, which is a right you do have. And so anyway, so the prosecutors, when that got blown up and was likely to get the whole testimony thrown out before the judge had an opportunity to rule, they voluntarily dismissed their own case or moved to dismiss it. And so ultimately the case never went forward, but it shows that the Department of Justice, and that's who filed this case, was willing to go that far to make an example to try to shut down modders and things like that. Likely Microsoft or somebody behind the scenes was pushing forward with that case to get them to move that. And so the question becomes, could Nintendo do this? Could they go to the Department of Justice and urge people to move forward? They're clearly working closely with the DOJ. They just got a bunch of domains seized. They're working closely with companies like YouTube to get content taken down. And so that becomes the question. Would they do that? Could the Department of Justice decide to make an example out of content creators? And the risk we have as content creators that cover this kind of content or talk about this kind of stuff is that the case in Italy, depending on how that goes, could definitely set a precedent. If Nintendo is the one pushing forward with the complaint, and we don't know, we know that Nintendo and Sony are listed as companies that were damaged by this, but whether they actually brought the complaint or not is unclear at this time because of the way Italian law works. But if it is found that Nintendo does it, this case moves forwards and this YouTuber ends up getting found guilty and prosecuted on this, does this give Nintendo the ammo, not really ammo, but they could point to this, but does it give them the confidence to think, well, it worked in Italy, let's try the next place? And certainly they have better protections in the United States than in a lot of other places, and really North America. But so it's something we need to watch and we need to be concerned at least a little bit about. I wouldn't lose any sleep over it. I wouldn't go deleting old content over it just yet, but maybe there are some things you can do. But so in reality, right, is the DOJ going after YouTube people? Not generally, no. I think maybe, depending on your size, like let's say you're Mr. Beast and you start doing Anbernic videos. I think they're going to say, we're going to take action, right? Because he could probably sell 100 million units in the span of 2 weeks. And that would open the eyes of the DOJ, which is why YouTubers of that size probably aren't doing this kind of content. It's also a double-edged sword. What if some of these YouTubers that do that kind of content actually do start getting big. Where's the line that is going to cross, right? So they're looking for, the DOJ typically looks for large scale commercial schemes, 6-figure revenues, blah, 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 thousands of units. They look for repeat offenders who ignore takedown notices, right? So they're probably going to start with, hey, take this video down, stop talking about this stuff. All you have to do is take it down. If you should ever find yourself in that space, they'll probably leave you alone. Or importers and wholesalers rather than reviewers, right? They're looking for the people that are actually shipping this stuff in. But at some point, they realize it's easier to go after the little fish, the guy who's not a big criminal empire behind him, doesn't have the financial resources to defend themselves. And so, overzealous companies, overzealous prosecutors could certainly turn an eye. They probably are not likely to at this stage. It's not really worth their time. But again, if they can make some examples of people, that's often what they look for. So how does it look here in the United States? And the reality is that no US creator has ever gone to jail for posting or monetizing a review of pirated ROM devices, right? It just hasn't happened. There's no sign that it will happen anytime soon, but it's something you should be aware of and something you should potentially consider talking about. So I see this comment in here, and this is exactly a great example, right? Glenn has been very clear through all his marketing, through all his discussions, that his device does not include illegal software. What it includes with is a fully licensed copy of Robbie the Robot, or whatever the name of the arcade game is. That comes with it. You also get the arcade software that gives you the ability to go out and download ROMs for games you have the right to. You have to attest in arcade that you have the right to the ROM before you download it. So it is not a device that is designed for that. If you misuse Glenn's FU Buildacade, that's on you, right? That's not on Glenn. Glenn has been very clear what the device is for and how to legally use it. And so that's an example of how to do things the right way, the responsible way, etc. Bundling in hard drives full of software, maybe not a great idea. But again, probably pretty low risk unless you're a huge business or really selling a lot of them. But we talked about those laws, right? So it's a great comment, whoever asked that question, and appreciate Jason putting that in there. That is very much on par. But Your Honor, James said I wouldn't get in trouble. James is for entertainment purposes only. And Hayden says, Mr. Beast actually gave away some Anbernic Game Boys at VidCon. Well, that's interesting. They may increase busts on people who are profiting from selling these drives online. They are low-hanging fruit. Yes, absolutely. Totally agree with that comment, Jason. That's the point. If Nintendo really is ramping up and going after more and more things, and if this case in Italy is Nintendo's behind it and they found basically an area where they think they can make an example and the Italian government went along with it, it could shift. If it's successful, you're going to see that in other locations. Now, again, I don't know that you're actually going to see him get jail time. I think that's sensationalism. While our laws also have jail time, they don't most always end up in fines, not jail. So the likelihood you'll ever be jailed over some of this stuff is very small, unless you're a really multi-year criminal, done it, repeat offender, just aren't doing stuff. Now, I'm not sure which of those laws have minimum sentences attached, possibly, but you're a first-time offender, it's highly unlikely you're going to get the book thrown at you. And that's if they even go about doing that stuff. Rainwater says, this is why I keep 500 physical NES carts, so I can use ROMs of them and get the plastic cartridges to back up my claims. There you go, right? So what can you do? Like, let's say you have a YouTube channel or website or a blog or a TikTok or a Instagram or whatever, where you talk about some of these things and some of these devices. Because again, reviews are fair use. You can absolutely do it. And so if you're going to partner with a company to review their products, maybe there's some steps you want to take just to provide some little CYA for yourself, put you in a good position just in case the issue ever comes up. And the first one is what we call a due diligence email. So this is for your documentation purposes. What you want to do is communicate with the potential partner, company, whatever you call it. And you basically just want to confirm that units do not ship with illegal software on them. Do it in writing so that you get a reply in writing where they tell you, nope, we don't do that. Right? Now you've got documentation. You've done your due diligence. You said, I want to make sure that you're complying with the law. They told you they're comply with the law. So if they don't, that's not really on you. You've done your due diligence to make sure that they do, and they told you they do. You have no reason to believe they wouldn't. Next up is probably stay away from affiliate links, right? If you're directly profiting from the sale of these goods through your review, that's going to get you into a gray area. Now, are you doing the volume that's going to trigger issues with marketing and stuff like that? Depends on the size of your channel. But it's probably a good idea to stay away from affiliate links for products that you know ship with illegal items on there, like ROMs. Next up is show, don't supply. So again, if you are going to review these units, talk about them, don't sell them in a merch store, don't resell them, probably don't even want to give them away like online or distribute them, because you're knowingly distributing items that you got that may have come with pirated ROMs. That's where you get it again into that area of being a distributor. You do not want to be a distributor. You do not want to be somebody selling or distributing these things. So think about that. If you do have, I would say one of the things you could probably do is, if it did come with ROMs, is get them off there. If you're going to give it away or do something, take them out so that you're not distributing illegal stuff. But just be aware. Don't distribute. Next up is, of course, always with any partnership, you got to disclose that you have an arrangement, whether you're being paid or just getting a free review copy. You need to disclose under your typical disclosure rules. And lastly, in your videos, you want to show gameplay. You want to go through different systems, maybe that this item is capable of running. Make sure you're showing stuff that you legally own. So if you are going to show Dreamcast, make sure it's a Dreamcast game you own so that it's legal for you. If you're going to show an NES game, an SNES game, Switch games, whatever, make sure they're ones you own so you can legitimately say, like, I own that, right? Like, it's mine. I didn't do an illegal copy. I showed you the one I own. So that's always something good. And if you want to show it as a ROM, right, you can use software like, in devices, USB devices like Retrode. There are some other devices out there that can take your physical media, dump a ROM, which you can use on there. So you're literally using the ROM from your cartridges. You can go that step, probably should go that step. But that's just safe. Make sure that when you're doing reviews of these units and showing various gameplay, make sure it's games you own the licenses to so that you are in the clear. You're not using a pirated ROM in the production of your video. Again, small area, but it's also a small thing you can do to get right with copyright, I guess. Let's yank all this stuff down. So that's my spiel. That's what we can learn tonight from the incident in Italy. I apologize, I'm looking over. So in case you were interested or wanted to know, I know not all of you are YouTubers, but you certainly watch a lot of YouTubers, so you can see who's kind of doing the right thing, who's doing the wrong thing. Again, knowing fully well that the likelihood, even if they're not fully compliant and they're trying to be, the likelihood that they're doing anything horrible, you guys know, the deal. So don't pirate, blah, 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 all that stuff. Pirating is wrong, yada, yada, yada. But now that I think about it, I want to pivot a little bit here as I look through some of the cops. Yeah, no Soldier Boy stuff. Maybe the Chinese companies who make handhelds and offer them with ROMs backed in should go after Nintendo or Japan with tariffs and the like instead. Maybe. So you just can't just say I'm selling the physical product and whatever on it is free. That is correct. That would be distributing pirated software. Even your own, right? Like there's technically a rule, like if let's say you had a PS3 and you installed a bunch of games on it, or even a bunch of downloaded games or whatever, and you've backed those up and you're keeping those, and you sell your device but you don't clean it off, you technically are distributing ROMs that aren't licensed, or software that's not licensed to that person, if you're keeping and maintaining and using those same software packages on a secondary device or a different device or whatever. And so that technically violates the line, crosses the line. Now, are you going to meet the threshold of doing that 10 times, $2,500 as a big financial enterprise? Probably not. So again, very small risk. They're not really going to care too much about that. But technically is technically. So my next mod will be put a hard drive in my fat PS2 so I can dump my physical game disc on the console. Yeah, those are great. Did you see the MK2 trailer? I absolutely did. I really enjoyed MK1, especially given the 90s versions of the MK movies. I thought it was superb. I like how they did the storytelling, focusing on Scorpion and Sub-Zero and that relationship. I thought that was a good buildup. There was some hokey stuff. I think, what's his ass looked ridiculous. Why am I drawing a blank? I get on the spot. I can't think of it. The Goro. And but for the most part, I really enjoyed the movie. And so when I had heard a while ago that Kyle Irvin was cast as Johnny Cage, I was like, well, that doesn't make any sense, because Johnny Cage is supposed to be this action hero. But seeing the trailer and how they're making him basically like the real Jean-Claude Van Damme, where it's now like 20 years past when he was a young guy doing all the movies, and now he's this older guy, and he's just past his prime and not that dude and not doing movies anymore, and he's kind of this has-been actor. I think that's a great take, right? And I loved the kind of grindhouse trailer that the first trailer they did, which was just the trailer for a Johnny Cage movie, and it was all hokey, like grindhouse stuff. Thought it was hilarious. And now that the new trailer came right on the back end of that, and you saw actual scenes from the movie, I'm even more excited. So really, really looking forward to that one. I probably won't waste money to see it in the theaters because I don't think it's that good of a movie. But once it hits like HBO Max, I'm all about it. I'll spend the 2 hours on that one. I did skip some pretty important news that I forgot about because it wasn't on a website. So I want to talk about those real quick for those who haven't seen it. And I meant to cover this when we were talking about some of the virtual pinball news. And of that, of course, is the parade of news from AtGames over the last week, which, of course, the first one I believe we touched on last Thursday was the announcement that Honor and Legacy Legends mini pack, so this was a Zen pinball pack, was delayed, right? So that's how we started off the week. Then we got this announcement, and these delays are just getting more and more common, right? These issues just keep happening. Then we got the announcement on the 14th that various online services within the AtGames ecosystem were having issues. ArcadeNet, your digital locker, your username and password, all issues that um, continue to plague them periodically, and their infrastructure. I don't know what's going on. We continue to have online service issues, and if you guys own the 4KP or the HD, you know how troublesome these are because you have to be connected. They always, every time they update on the 4KP, they're kicking you out of offline mode. So if you can't get online, you can't play your games. Lots of issues. You know, I think the week before they had Flipper Friends scoring issues or something was going on. So we continue to see periodic online service issues. And then, of course, the news late yesterday that the pinball pack that was scheduled to come out that day or today, one of the two, I can't remember what day it was supposed to really, yeah, scheduled to come out today, excuse me, is also delayed. This is, I believe this is a Magic Pixel table. So again, another delay, 2 packs in a row. And, you know, towards the end of last month, beginning of this month, we got a bunch of delayed packs all at the same time. And so it looked like, hey, maybe whatever was the problem is now cleared up. But now we've got 2 more packs in a row, both delayed indefinitely. No info about when they might come out. So very concerning that AtGames continues to have this issue. We've all heard the rumors about all the layoffs that they've had. Their support's cut way down. You know, I've talked on this channel about the issues that we believe is with the developer that they hired to do the Killer Instinct on the AtGames Legends Ultimate 4K that is now a dead product. But before that was announced as it being a dead product, like that guy had come out and said he's breaking up with the company that hired him to do it. I don't know who else it could be other than AtGames. They're the only ones that we know of that have the license to release that. And who needed somebody to help them create, you know, an online play system. And so just the hits just keep coming for AtGames. And you know, I've seen people complaining online that they haven't had restocks in any of the 4KP hardware in a long time. Really sought after systems have been out of stock forever. But that didn't stop AtGames from increasing the prices on these. And they were all units they already had in the country, but you know, theoretically you would raise prices in order to order and purchase new stock because of the tariffs. But with no new stock actually shipping and coming in, what's happening there is AtGames just stockpiling cash right now. They decide like it was certainly potential, right? That maybe it's not a money problem. Maybe they've just decided that because of the tariffs and the uncertainty, they're just going to try to stockpile cash, save money everywhere they can, save up a big nest egg so that when the economic environment is more stable, then they'll make some big moves. I don't know. I mean, that's the optimistic side of me. The pessimistic side says, seeing a lot of evidence that there's some big problems going on, but who knows, right? You know, we don't have any idea, but it is certainly concerning to see this stuff. Atran, thanks for dropping by. Ritual Dello, hey, nice to see you. I don't know if I missed you earlier. Joysticks, of course, is here. Don't sell your mod at Arcade OneUp. Yeah. So Hayden says stop killing games. Zero Redux obviously here as well. I know I probably missed some people. So Danny is saying do the right thing. So wanted to talk about that. So that's the last bit of news that I missed. And then, you know, as I want to do here now every week, I want to spotlight a comment of the week. And so this week's comment of the week, I think, fits right in with what we're talking about today, which is the issues around Nintendo and their enforcement of their copyright rights. And this one comes from 71987, so interesting name. Says Nintendo is just getting even more insane. Again, if Nintendo decides buying isn't owning, we decide pirating isn't stealing. So thank you, 7, for the comment. I really appreciate it. this is definitely something that I've said myself. If in this day and age, if you're not allowed to own software, if everything is going to go digital and they're going to insist that you don't actually own it, that you're just licensing it. Well, if I can't own it, I can't steal it, right? So, while that's not a legal principle, it certainly feels like a moral one. And so, what I would encourage people to do, if you feel similar and you don't like this direction that gaming is going with these download onlys, you never own your game. And I'm not in principle against download only. What I'm against is the principle that you don't own the software you purchase. And so I think for digital, there are ways around this, right? There are things like NFTs and other licensing or applications that could very easily make it so you can sell a digital item. And there's no reason at this day and age that these haven't been implemented by these companies, other than they know they don't want you to have the ability to sell it. They want somebody who wants that software to have to come to them and pay them. Used game prices are often a lot cheaper. They can resell a game that came out 5 years ago that in physical form may cost $5, but they can still charge the full original retail price to try to get it out of people. And I think that's horrible. And that's really the motive behind what they're doing, nothing else. And so I would encourage you to contact your local elected officials. And I say local, I mean like within your state. Like this, I think really has to be started as a state's movement. I know California took some steps, but their steps went the wrong direction and actually enshrined your company's abilities to make sure you never own software. But I think, at the state level, we can start by, getting our elected officials to pass consumer-friendly rights bills. So that you are guaranteed ownership of your license at a bare minimum. The license you have needs to be able to be transferable. You paid for it. It's in perpetuity. You should be able to transfer that to somebody else at any time, any way you choose. And there are plenty of open source, freely used ways to do that these companies could comply with at little to no cost to them. And so, and honestly, if GameStop was smart, they'd forget about stupid Pokemon cards and have invested their time and efforts into creating that platform so that they could be the distributor of used digital games instead of just used physical games. It would fit their business model. It would be huge. But they're not that smart over at GameStop, which is why now they're trying to save their business with Pokemon cards. And not that Pokemon cards aren't great and highly popular right now, but it's really like basketball cards or football cards, baseball cards in the 80s. It's all going to implode. So good luck to them. But so, that's what I would encourage. I think you get different states passing different laws, then it forces it up to the federal level to do something. But that would be my suggestion, because I think it's crap that we as consumers don't have rights that we've had for generations that are all now being stripped away from us. They're talking about some confusing sales on the 4KP. It says, funny all the MAGA who voted for this, how that stable economy going for you all now. Yeah, I mean, obviously, difference of opinions there. I think tariffs have been a long-term measure that both parties have called for, more so recently in the Republican Party, but I know definitely Democrats have called for it in the past. It's important to, have some protections for workers, right? And when you have like cheap labor from outside, there you go. I know we all like cheap products, but there's a balancing act to cheap products and doing what's right for you know, friends, family, neighbors, things like that in our communities. So I'll just that's don't get political. I'll just say that. Um, yep, I like to hold a physical game on my hand. I also like to look at it on a shelf. Um, yep, and Jason's actually sharing here how to find your congressperson, your local and state legislatures. Definitely worth doing that. Rainwater says 300 nerd subscribers just unsubbed because you made fun of their beloved Pokemon cards. uh, I'm missing the L in my GI Joel shirt. Good call, Israel. So again, appreciate everybody for being here tonight. Enjoyed talking about this. You know, I like the legal goofy stuff and all the news of the week. Next week we should have a special guest, so look forward to that. And you might as well smash the like button because you're still watching at this point. So even if you hated it, just hit the like button, hit the dislike button. I don't give a shit. Just hit one of the buttons. Subscribe for more stuff like this. And look, I got a fancy like one of these things now. So like, yeah, hit that like and subscribe button. And you know what we do here. If I can find it. Until next time, have fun.